Welcome back to Rockstar Intuition. Today, we're going to talk about how remote viewing can be used to screen stock picks. Back in April 2025, I started using remote viewing to manage my savings account, and I'm currently up about 200%. The biggest chunk of those gains has come from one specific company, a stock that my most recent analysis showed would run significantly in February 2026 as a result of some good news. Sure enough, the company obtained critical environmental approvals that allow them to move from concept to commercial production in both the US and UK, and the price exploded 135% in the month. That company is HGRAF Clean Power, and I've been running a long-term remote viewing project on it since July of 2025. HGRAF is a graphene company and a potential disruptor in the broader material science industry. Using a proprietary explosion-based synthesis process, they claim to have solved the holy grail of the green revolution, producing 99.8% pure graphene at scale with zero carbon footprint. Graphene is the strongest, thinnest, and most conductive material known to man, essential for the next generation of batteries, semiconductors, and aerospace applications. While the market has historically struggled with production costs, HGRAF's fractal graphene technology has turned a laboratory dream into a promising industrial reality. I've been using remote viewing to screen my entries into HG since July of 2025, catching dips along the way and yielding a 400% return by the end of February 2026. It went even higher in March, peaking at just over $11 before entering a slight correction. We predicted that too. As we move into the potential unicorn phase of this company's growth, with approvals in place and construction of new facilities on the horizon, I'm not just looking at the balance sheet or technical analysis. I'm doubling down on remote viewing to find what might be missing. In addition to adding HG as a monthly target for my own remote viewing practice, I put it in the queue as a blind target for my professional remote viewing team, Second House RV. The viewers were given nothing but a randomly generated target reference number and direction that the target was a company. They were asked to do a deep dive on the company itself, its growth over various time frames, which I listed as A, B, and C in the tasking to remove bias, and to identify any potential risks and opportunities from the perspective of a potential investor. If you want to see a detailed breakdown of those sessions, make sure you follow our Second House RV channel on YouTube. I'll drop a link in the description. We'll get into what they found a bit later in this video too, but first I'm going to give a quick rundown of what remote viewing actually is for those who are new to the channel and how I've been using it to screen my entries for this project. Remote viewing is a structured, repeatable methodology to perceive and record accurate non-local information, meaning information that resides outside of your normal perception of space-time. You may have seen it portrayed in popular media like Stranger Things, The Men Who Stare at Goats, or the recent 12-minute short film Anomaly on YouTube, which is probably the most accurate portrayal of remote viewing I've seen to date, and definitely worth a watch. I'll throw that link in the description too. The structured remote viewing methodology was designed by scientists at the Stanford Research Institute back in the 1970s with funding from the US military. It was originally developed for intelligence applications. Another key element of the remote viewing protocol is the use of blind feedbackable targets, meaning the viewer does not know what they're viewing at the start of the session, and at some point they receive feedback or confirmation of what target they were actually viewing. If you want to learn more about the history of remote viewing, I suggest checking out the documentary Third Eye Spies. The blind targeting protocol effectively creates a perceptual time loop that bookends any given remote viewing session. The methodology itself relies on a series of steps and stages, including a meditation or relaxation phase at the start, and the aforementioned target feedback at the end. I'm not going to get into all of these here. While operational intelligence gathering targets can be quite complex, the methods I've used in this project are a bit simpler and only require the first few stages of remote viewing. I've got a free course where you can learn more about the different steps and stages over at rockstarintuition.com, and paid courses for those who want to dive a little bit deeper. Probably the most important stage of remote viewing that I rely on for this project is stage 1, also known as the ideogram. Ideograms are basically a psychosomatic scribble that the viewer does at the start of their session after setting an intention to connect with the target. With practice, those scribbles can start to look like the target, as with the example here on the screen from a session I did during my initial training that shows the arch of the bridge, a hard right angle for the abutment, and waves for the water below. When your target is a stock chart, the ideogram becomes a quick and powerful way to get the information you're after, so long as you've done sufficient practice and eliminated any subconscious biases that can very easily derail a remote viewing session. In fact, managing your subconscious mind might be the main challenge and source of errors in any given remote viewing session. I like to think of remote viewing as a jam session or maybe a recording session between the conscious and subconscious mind. Your subconscious is the studio musician, channeling tasty riffs from the ether, and your conscious mind is the recording engineer, listening and transcribing the music down to tape. Like music or any other creative flow state process, remote viewing activates and engages your intuition. You can also think of this relationship like an iceberg, with the subconscious mind as the tip of the iceberg, the subconscious and unconscious as the body of it, submerged in the greater information field, which is represented by the ocean. It's all water, and any given molecule can move freely, in theory, between all three locations. From your position as the conscious tip of the iceberg, you can only perceive and process a limited amount of information. Your submerged subconscious, however, is much more powerful and deeply connected to the greater sea of information that exists across time and space. Remote viewing is effectively a turbocharged meditation practice. You can use it to solve problems, predict future events. You can use the simplified version of remote viewing known as associative remote viewing to screen binary choice alternatives, such as whether an asset is going to move up or down over a particular time period. I'm far from the first person to use it this way, too. The scientists at SRI I mentioned earlier did their own successful market-based experiments in ARV, targeting the silver market, one of which they describe in the documentary Third Eye Spies, and another from the 1990s, which is pictured here. While remote viewing is never 100% accurate, it can give you a definitive edge in any arena where binary choices can lead to profit. Before I started this hydrograph project, Second House actually ran a series of calibration trials to get our team locked in, using ARV to determine outcomes from the 2025 NHL and NBA Finals. We managed a hit rate of about 70%, which is actually pretty solid, considering profitable professional gamblers tend to hit around 55% of the time. Predicting the outcomes of sports gambling events is also a bit harder than predicting movement of stocks, in my opinion. Stocks are also probably a bit less risky because they don't generally tend to go to zero immediately when you're wrong, like in a sports bet. That being said, nothing in this video, or anything on this channel for that matter, should ever be considered financial or investment advice. My results are probably not typical, and they're a product of 5 years of training. While I do use remote viewing data to validate my picks, I do so in combination with other research methods. This is where remote viewing really shines, as an orthogonal data vector to support more traditional intelligence gathering and analysis. That being said, let's get back to the hydrograph project. Back in July of 2025, I came across an intriguing podcast about a clean energy company called HGRAF. After doing some very basic research, I thought it seemed like a good opportunity. HGRAF was trading at about 60 cents that day, and I immediately set up a blind ARV session using software to see if it would go to 30 cents first or 90 cents first. The software also picks photos and associates them with my two options in the background so that I stay blind to the target. I ran a quick stage 1 and 2 session and got strong impressions of a round object flying over the water, as well as the colors green, blue, brown, and black, and this feeling of being somewhere out in the jungle or somewhere in nature. When I was presented with the two photos to confirm which way my session implied the price was going, the one that matched my session the best was this photo of a fully loaded boat. After I made my selection, the software informed me that this image represented that the price was going up. I think the other photo was a close-up picture of an orange or something like that. I'd run the session on a Sunday, and by the time I checked the markets on Monday, HGRAF was already up to 80 cents. The loaded boat symbolism was not lost on me, and I felt a sense of urgency to get in, so I made my initial buy and began to watch it climb. In mid-August, the price spiked to about $4 and promptly crashed by 50%. I hadn't thought to sell the top, thinking that the price was probably going to go to the moon. A newbie mistake, I suppose. In other words, the experiment was going very well. Given the big drop in price, however, I thought it might be a good spot to buy, so I set up another ARV session. This time I set my price range between $111 and $277. This wasn't really based on anything, just intuitive. I kind of liked how those numbers looked. Also, the current price was kind of right in the middle of them when I ran the session. I ended up selecting the price goes up option in the second session too, but I waited a little while to buy, thinking I might be able to get a slightly better price. I pulled the trigger around $1.47, and sure enough, a few weeks later, the price hit my upper target of $277. This session also had a strong impression of water and something that was round or rotating. I got the colors blue, green, and white, the sensation of fresh air and splashing water, and a refreshing, energized feeling. I also had visual impressions of a pointy structure that reminded me of a boat and the sensation of crashing waves. You'll never guess what my image choices were. Once again, the universe was showing me it was time to load the boats, so I bought 100 shares with the intention of selling them if and when my target hit for the sake of documentation, and continued to buy dips along the way. In the months which followed, I was doing a lot of remote viewing with Second House and further developing my ideogram-based approach to financial RV, which I've started to call chartomancy. Our focus with Second House was on the broader markets, targeting things like S&P 500, VIX, and silver, like our remote viewing forefathers from SRI. As you can see from this chart, I successfully called a huge pump in silver for January, and by the end of the month caught the feeling it was time to try another hydrograph session, and perhaps add it to my monthly list of targets. By the way, if you want to stay up to speed on those, I share all of my private targets over on my subscription site, rockstarintuition.com. I ran my first hydrograph chartomancy session on January 25th. I drew the ideogram on a blank template and then laid the grid under it as part of my analysis phase, in order to estimate where I thought the moves would correlate over the course of the month. I was intrigued to see that the symbol in the middle of my chart was the same one I had for silver in January. This is something I've come to call my not-to-scale pump symbol. I also had symbols that implied big news early in the month and an important day that coincided with a double top in the chart. While I didn't quite nail the scale of the tops exactly, there was indeed important news and announcements, both at the beginning of the month, when Hydrograph announced a new partnership with Hubron International, a giant plastics company, and after the 20th, when HG received their environmental approvals, all of which ultimately led to the stock closing out at over $7 at the end of February, 135% return for the month, and 400% return overall for my own position. This again begged the question, where's Hydrograph going next? Could it keep running? It also continued to climb to new all-time highs in early March, and seemed unstoppable even in the face of scary global news events. So I ended up running another session for March. My monthly chart for March showed a big dip in the first week, which ended up being from about $9 to $7. This was followed by another pump back up, which ended up being another all-time high of over $11. I also predicted another dip in the middle of the month, which we seem to be navigating now, back in the $7 to $8 range at the time of recording this video on March 16th, 2026. The first time frame in our blind remote viewing session was actually the monthly chart for March, and the team ended up getting very similar results to me, suggesting a bit of a correction was coming. All of the viewers were on target and consistent with their data about the company, describing modular or stackable systems that manufactured something small or fractal in a simple way, with high speed and/or high energy. I saw this as solid correlation with the explosive synthesis process and Hydrograph's patented Hyperion reactors. Viewers also hinted at a significant partnership or merger on the horizon, and everyone felt that the team leading the company was strong, capable, and science-first. Our blind sessions also suggested a strong year for Hydrograph overall, perhaps with a few dips that correlate more with world events than with anything to do with the company itself. I think we're seeing some of that play out right now, and expect the volatility to continue, maybe for a few months. Be sure to follow Rockstar Intuition and Second House RV here on YouTube to stay in the loop as things develop. We'll also be dropping a full debrief on the blind sessions pretty soon. I just gotta get the editing done. And if you want to skip the wait and see right now where we think things are headed, I recently launched a VIP tier on my private site over at rockstarintuition.com, where I post all of my monthly financial RV session data, analysis, and updates, unredacted for subscribers. VIPs also get access to all my remote viewing courses and the live events and challenges that I run at different times during the year, plus a discount on private consultations. There's also a student tier for half price if you don't care about the financial stuff, and you can join for free if you just want to check out the community and try out my Remote Viewing 101 class that was recorded live off the floor a couple years ago. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into what has easily been my most financially successful remote viewing project to date. Please, please, please do not go out and buy a bunch of stocks after watching this video. I am not telling anyone what they should or should not buy, and I am completely unqualified to give investment or financial advice. What I do know is that investing is risky, and you should always do your own research before trusting random wizards on the internet. That being said, I personally plan to keep holding Hydrograph for the long term, and I hope it delivers on its transformative environmental potential. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.